I found my wife's secret phone, and the messages weren't what I expected. You know that feeling when your whole world tilts sideways? When everything you thought was solid just crumbles? Yeah, well, buckle up, because that's exactly where this story's headed. My name's Jake. I'm 43, and I fix air conditioners for a living in Phoenix. Not glamorous, but it pays the bills. Been married to Sarah for 16 years. Got 2 kids, and thought I had life figured out. Boy, was I wrong. It started 3 months ago on a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are my late days, when I service the office buildings downtown. Sarah's usually asleep when I get home, curled up on her side of the bed with that ratty old book she's been reading for months. But that night, the bedroom was empty. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at our little wooden table with a cup of tea getting cold in her hands. The steam had stopped rising, which meant she'd been sitting there a while. Her brown hair was loose around her shoulders, and she had that faraway look, like she was somewhere else entirely. "Hey, babe," I said, dropping my toolbox by the door. "You okay?" She startled, actually jumped like I'd scared her. Sarah never startles. This woman once caught a spider with her bare hands while I was screaming like a little girl. "Oh, Jake."
Yeah, I'm
fine. Just thinking. Just thinking. Those 2 words should have been my first red flag. Sarah's not a just thinking kind of person. She's a doer, a planner, a woman who makes lists for her lists. When Sarah thinks, she talks it through out loud, usually while pacing around the house like a caged tiger. But I was tired. My back ached from crawling through dusty air ducts all day, and all I wanted was a shower and my pillow. So I kissed the top of her head, mumbled something about being beat, and headed upstairs. I should have stayed. Should have asked more questions. Should have seen what was right in front of me. The weird behavior didn't stop there. Over the next few weeks, Sarah started changing. Little things at first. She'd get these text messages that made her smile in this secretive way, then quickly flip her phone face down. She started going to the grocery store more often, sometimes twice in one day, and she'd come home with bags full of stuff we didn't need. Fancy cheese, expensive wine, those little chocolate truffles she used to say were a waste of money. "Since when do we eat brie?" I asked one evening, finding a wheel of it in our fridge next to the leftover pizza. "I thought we should try new things," she said, not looking up from whatever she was typing on her phone. "Expand our horizons. Expand our horizons." Sarah, who'd been ordering the same chicken Caesar salad at Romano's for the past decade, suddenly wanted to expand our horizons. Then came the phone calls. Always in the other room, always in hushed tones. When I'd walk in, she'd quickly wrap up with something generic like, "Okay, talk soon," and hang up. "Who was that?" I'd ask. "Just Mom." Or "just Linda from work." Or "just the dentist's office." But here's the thing about living with someone for 16 years. You learn their tells. And Sarah's tell when she's lying? She touches her left earring. Just a quick little adjustment, like she's making sure it's still there. She'd been touching that earring a lot lately. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in October. I was out in the garage, trying to fix our lawn mower before the neighbors started giving me dirty looks about our jungle of a front yard. Sarah had said she was running to Target, needed to pick up some things for Emma's school project. That's when I heard it. The unmistakable chime of her phone getting a text. But the sound was coming from inside the house, and her car was already pulling out of the driveway. She'd forgotten her phone. Now, I'm not proud of what happened next, but desperation makes you do things you never thought you'd do. I went inside, and there it was, sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with notification after notification. My hands were shaking as I picked it up, and I could hear my heartbeat in my ears like a bass drum. The screen was locked, but I knew her passcode. Our anniversary, August 12th, 07. She'd never changed it, said it was the most important date in her life. At least that part was still true, or so I thought. I swiped up, and the first thing I saw nearly knocked me over. Message after message from someone named A in her contacts. Not Alex or Amanda or Andrew. Just A. My thumb hovered over the conversation thread. This was it. The moment that would either confirm my worst fears or prove I was just a paranoid husband who'd been watching too many true crime documentaries. I tapped it. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. Been thinking about you all night. My stomach dropped like I'd fallen off a cliff. The message was from yesterday, sent at 11:47 p.m. I'd been asleep right next to her. I scrolled up, reading more messages, each one like a punch to the gut. That thing you did with your tongue. God, Sarah. My wife suspects nothing. We're good. Same hotel as last time? Room 237. The phone slipped from my hands and clattered onto the tile floor. I stared at it lying there, screen still glowing with evidence of my wife's betrayal, and felt something inside me just break. But then something weird happened. Instead of the rage I expected, instead of the urge to throw things or scream or put my fist through the wall, I felt curious. Who was A? How long had this been going on? And why did that last message bother me more than the others? My wife suspects nothing. Not my husband. My wife. I picked up the phone again, hands steadier now, and scrolled through more messages. Weeks and weeks of them. And slowly, piece by piece, a different picture started forming. It wasn't Alex or Andrew or any other man's name. It was Amy. And Amy was married to a woman. I sat down hard on one of our kitchen stools, trying to process what I was reading. These weren't just affair messages. They were love messages. Real, deep, emotional conversations between two people who'd found something they'd been missing. I never knew I could feel this way about another woman, Sarah had written 3 weeks ago. I know, baby. I felt the same way when I first realized. Scary as hell, but also freeing, Amy had replied. What if Jake finds out? What if the kids find out? God. Amy, what if I lose everything? You won't lose everything. You'll lose the life that was never really yours to begin with. And you'll find the one that is. I scrolled further back, looking for the beginning of their relationship. It started innocent enough. Messages about a book club they were both part of. Sarah had mentioned joining one a few months back, said she needed more female friends, more intellectual stimulation. The first personal message was from 6 weeks ago. Sarah, thanks for talking to me after book club tonight. I've been feeling so lost lately. Amy, of course. Sometimes we need someone who really sees us. You know? Sarah, yeah, Jake's a good man, but he sees who he wants me to be, not who I actually am. Amy, I get that. My wife does the same thing. It's exhausting, pretending to be someone else all the time. And from there, it escalated. Late-night conversations about dreams they'd given up, identities they'd buried, feelings they'd never acknowledged. The physical stuff didn't start until 2 weeks ago, but the emotional affair, that had been building for over a month. I was still staring at the phone when I heard Sarah's car pull back into the driveway. My heart hammered as I quickly closed the messages and set the phone back exactly where I'd found it. What the hell was I supposed to do with this information? Sarah walked in carrying Target bags and wearing that same distracted expression she'd had for weeks. But now I knew why. She wasn't thinking about me or the kids or even her mysterious lover. She was thinking about who she really was underneath the life we'd built together. Find everything you needed? I asked, my voice somehow normal despite the chaos in my head. What? Oh yeah, just the usual stuff. She glanced at her phone, noticed the notifications, and her face went pale for just a second. Then she grabbed it and headed toward the bathroom. I'm gonna jump in the shower real quick. I watched her go, noting the way her shoulders curved inward like she was protecting herself from something. For me, probably, the next few days were torture. I kept waiting for her to say something, to confess, to give me an opening to confront her about what I'd found. But she just carried on. Made dinner, helped with homework, asked about my day like nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. I was looking at my wife of 16 years and seeing a stranger. Not because she was having an affair, but because she was having an identity crisis that I'd been completely oblivious to. Had she always felt this way? Had there been signs I'd missed? How long had she been pretending to be happy with our life? I started watching her differently. The way she flinched when I touched her. The way she'd go quiet during romantic scenes in movies. The way she'd become more interested in her female friends' lives than mine. God, I'd been so blind. Friday night, Sarah said she was going out with her book club friends. I knew she was meeting Amy. The lie rolled off her tongue so easily. It made me wonder what other lies I'd been swallowing without question. Have fun, I said, kissing her cheek. She smelled like the vanilla perfume I'd bought her for Christmas last year. But she was wearing it for someone else now. After she left, I sat in our living room, surrounded by 16 years of shared memories. Wedding photos on the mantle. Kids' artwork on the fridge. A throw pillow Sarah had embroidered with "Home is where the heart is" during one of her crafty phases. But where was her heart now? I could have called a lawyer. Could have started planning my exit strategy. Could have confronted her when she got home, demanding explanations and apologies and promises to end it. But instead, I did something that surprised even me. I started researching. Not how to catch a cheating spouse or how to file for divorce. I researched what it meant to come out later in life. What it felt like to realize your sexuality at 39. What happens to families when one parent discovers they're gay. And what I found, it broke my heart in a completely different way. Story after story of women who'd spent decades living as someone else. Who'd gotten married and had kids because that's what was expected, what felt safe, what seemed normal. Women who loved their husbands as friends, as partners, as co-parents, but who'd never been in love with them. Women who felt guilty and scared and trapped by their own awakening. Women exactly like Sarah. When she came home that night, I was still on the couch with my laptop. She looked different. Her cheeks were flushed, her hair slightly messed up, and there was a lightness in her step I hadn't seen in years. "How was book club?" I asked. "Good," she said, touching that damn earring again. "We're reading this amazing memoir about a woman who completely changed her life at 40. Really inspiring stuff." I bet it was. "Sarah," I said, closing my laptop, "can we talk?" The color drained from her face. "About what?" "About us. About how you've been feeling lately." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, as far from me as possible. "I don't know what you mean. You seem different, distant, like you're somewhere else even when you're here." Her hands were shaking. "Jake, are you happy?" I interrupted. "I mean really happy. With me, with our life, with who you are when you're with me." The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I thought she might finally tell me the truth. Instead, she said, "Of course I'm happy. Why would you ask me that?" Another lie, another touch of the earring. But this time I understood why she was lying. She wasn't protecting her affair. She was protecting me, protecting our kids, protecting the life we'd built together, even if it was suffocating her. "Just wondering," I said softly. "You know I love you, right? No matter what." She nodded, tears spilling over now. "I love you too, Jake. And the thing is, I believed her, just not in the way I used to." The following week, I made a decision that probably sounds crazy. I started doing things to make it easier for Sarah to leave me. I accidentally brought up a news story about a celebrity couple who'd gotten an amicable divorce. I mentioned how mature they seemed, how they were still co-parenting beautifully. I talked about how sometimes people grow in different directions, and that doesn't make anyone the bad guy. I started taking on more responsibilities with the kids, proving I could handle single parenting. I fixed that wobbly banister she'd been nagging me about for months. I even started looking into apartments near the house, just in case. Was I sabotaging my own marriage? Maybe. But watching Sarah slowly disappear into herself was killing me more than losing her ever could. 3 weeks later, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text while she was in the shower. It was sitting on our dresser, and the preview showed on the lock screen. "Amy, told my wife last night. She's devastated but says she understands. We're meeting with a mediator next week." My heart pounded as I realized what this meant. Amy was leaving her wife, which meant the pressure on Sarah to make a decision was about to intensify. That night, Sarah was quieter than usual at dinner. The kids chattered about their day, but she just pushed food around her plate, lost in thought. After we put Emma and Tyler to bed, we were doing dishes together like we had thousands of times before. But there was something different in the air. A tension that felt like the moment before a thunderstorm. "Jake," Sarah said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What would you do if you found out something about yourself that changed everything?" I stopped scrubbing the casserole dish and looked at her. Really looked at her. Her brown eyes were filled with fear and hope and desperation all at once. "I guess," I said carefully, "I'd hope the people who love me would want me to be happy, even if it meant being happy without them." She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for something. Then she burst into tears. Not delicate crying. Ugly, shoulder-shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside her chest. I dried my hands and pulled her into my arms, and she collapsed against me like she'd been holding herself up by sheer willpower. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into my shirt. "I'm so sorry." "For what, baby?" But she just cried harder. We stood there in our kitchen, holding each other while our marriage quietly fell apart. And the strangest thing was, it felt like the most honest moment we'd shared in years. She didn't confess that night, but she didn't need to. We both knew what was coming. The conversation happened 2 days later. Sarah had asked me to sit down after the kids went to bed, and she had that look on her face, like someone about to jump off a cliff. "I need to tell you something," she started, her voice shaking, "and I need you to let me get through it before you say anything. Okay?" I nodded, even though my heart was hammering so hard I could barely hear her. "I've been figuring some things out about myself lately, things that I probably should have figured out a long time ago." She took a shaky breath. "Jake, I think... No, I know. I'm gay." There it was. The truth I'd been carrying around for weeks, finally spoken out loud. "I never meant for this to happen," she continued, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, I do. You're an amazing man and a wonderful father, and you've been nothing but good to me. But I can't keep pretending to be someone I'm not." She told me about Amy, about the feelings she'd been having for years but pushed down, about the affair, though she called it falling in love, and apologized about 50 times for the betrayal. When she finished, she looked at me with such raw vulnerability that it took my breath away. "Say something," she whispered. "Please. How long have you known?" I asked. "Known for sure?" "About 6 weeks. But suspected. Probably longer than I want to admit." "And Amy?" "She's leaving her wife. They're getting divorced." Sarah's voice cracked. "I know what this means for us, Jake. I know what I'm asking of you." She was asking me to let her go, to blow up our family so she could finally be herself. And you know what? I was going to say yes. "I saw the messages," I said quietly. Her face went white. "You, what?" "A few weeks ago, you forgot your phone, and it was buzzing with texts. I shouldn't have looked, but..." I shrugged. "I did." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because you needed to tell me yourself. Because this isn't about me, Sarah. It's about you finally figuring out who you are." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're not angry?" Was I angry? Yeah, part of me was furious. But a bigger part of me was just sad. Sad for her, for me, for our kids, for all the years she'd spent trying to be someone else. "I'm hurt," I said honestly. "About the lying, about the affair. But angry that you're gay? Sarah, you can't be angry at someone for something they can't control. Most men would be screaming right now. Most men wouldn't have spent 3 weeks researching late in life coming out stories and quietly planning their own exit strategy." Her mouth fell open. "You, what?" I told her about the research, about the apartment hunting, about all the little things I'd been doing to make our inevitable separation easier. When I finished, she was crying again. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do that?" "Because I love you enough to want you to be happy, even if it's not with me." And that's when she completely broke down. "I don't deserve you," she sobbed. "I don't deserve any of this understanding. I cheated on you, Jake. I've been lying to you for months. You've been lying to yourself for years. I corrected. There's a difference. We talked until almost 3 a.m. that night. About our marriage, about the kids, about what came next. It wasn't easy. There were tears and accusations and moments when old resentments bubbled up. But mostly it was honest. Maybe the most honest conversation we'd ever had. We decided to tell the kids together the next weekend. To start looking into mediation rather than lawyers. To try to do this right as much as divorce can ever be right. But here's where the story gets really interesting. 3 days before we were supposed to talk to Emma and Tyler, Sarah came home from work looking like she'd seen a ghost. "We need to talk," she said, in the same tone she'd used when she confessed her sexuality. Now what? We sat down at that same kitchen table where I'd found her thinking that first night. "Amy's having second thoughts," Sarah said without preamble. "About leaving her wife? About everything. About us. About what this means. About whether she's ready to come out publicly." Sarah's hands were shaking again. "She wants to take a break. To think things through." I blinked. A break from what? From our relationship. From the divorce proceedings. From me. So the woman my wife had blown up our marriage for was getting cold feet. "How do you feel about that?" I asked, surprised by how calm my voice sounded. "Lost," Sarah admitted. "I finally figured out who I am. And now the person who helped me figure it out is walking away. That doesn't change who you are, though, doesn't it?" She looked at me with confusion written all over her face. "What if I'm wrong, Jake? What if this whole thing has been some kind of midlife crisis or mental breakdown?" This is where most husbands would have pounced. Seen an opportunity to save their marriage, to convince their wife she was confused, to pretend none of this had ever happened. But I'd done too much research. Read too many stories. I knew that questioning was part of the process, not evidence that she was wrong about herself. "Sarah," I said gently, "do you think you're wrong?" She was quiet for a long time. "No," she finally whispered. "I think I'm gay. I think I've always been gay. I think I married you because you were safe and kind and I thought that was what love was supposed to feel like. Then Amy getting scared doesn't change anything. It just means you have to figure this out without her. But what if I can't? What if I'm too old to start over, too set in my ways to build a new life?" And that's when I made the most important decision of this whole mess. "Then you don't have to start over completely," I said. "We can figure this out together." She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about staying married, staying a family, but being honest about what that looks like." "Yeah, I know how that sounds. But hear me out. You're gay," I continued. "I'm straight. We're not in love romantically, but we love each other as friends, as partners, as parents. What if we just acknowledged that? What if we stayed married but gave each other permission to find romantic love elsewhere?" "Jake, that's crazy." "Is it? Is it crazier than blowing up our kids' lives? Is it crazier than starting over completely when we actually work well together in every way except the bedroom?" She stared at me for a long moment. "You'd be okay with me dating women? As long as you're discreet and the kids' well-being comes first?" "Yeah, I think I would be. And maybe eventually, I'd find someone too. Someone who could accept that my family includes my wife, even if she's not my romantic partner." I know. Sounds insane. But the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. "There are couples who make this work," I said. "I read about them. Mixed orientation marriages where both people are honest about their needs." "And you'd really be okay with that?" "I'd rather have you in my life as a friend than lose you completely as a wife." Sarah started crying again. But these were different tears. Relief, maybe. Or hope. "I love you so much," she whispered. "Not the way you deserve to be loved, but you love me exactly the way I need to be loved," I interrupted. "As a friend, as a partner, as the mother of my children. The romantic stuff, we can figure that out separately." We didn't make any decisions that night, but for the first time in months we both slept peacefully. Over the next few weeks we started having the difficult conversations about boundaries and expectations and what this unconventional arrangement would look like in practice. We found a therapist who specialized in mixed orientation marriages. We read books and articles and talked to other couples who'd made similar choices. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wondered if I was being a fool, if I was just postponing the inevitable. There were moments when Sarah worried she was being selfish, asking too much of me. But slowly we started building something new. Not a traditional marriage, but a partnership based on honesty instead of pretense. And you know what? It's working. Sarah started dating again 6 months later. Not Amy, that ship had sailed, but a woman named Chris she met through an LGBTQ support group. Chris is kind and funny and treats Sarah like she's something precious. When I see them together, I see my wife the way she was meant to be seen. Radiant, authentic, free. I haven't started dating yet, but I'm not ruling it out. The therapist says I need to heal from the loss of my romantic marriage before I can build a new one. She's probably right. The kids adjusted better than we expected. We told them Mom and Dad love each other very much, but in a different way than most married couples. That we're staying a family, just a different kind of family. Tyler, who's 12, mostly cares that nothing else is changing. Emma, who's 15, asks some tough questions but seems to understand. Am I happy? That's complicated. I'm sad about the life I thought I had. I'm lonely sometimes in ways I never was before. I grieve the romantic partnership I lost, even though I know it was never really what I thought it was. But I'm also proud of what we've built. I'm grateful that Sarah trusted me with her truth. I'm amazed by her courage in living authentically, even when it's hard. And I'm hopeful that someday, I'll find someone who can love all of me, including the unconventional family I come with. Here's what I learned from all this. Love isn't just about romance. It's about seeing someone fully and wanting them to be their truest self, even when that self doesn't include you in the way you expected. Marriage doesn't have to look like what everyone else thinks it should look like. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is redefine it entirely. And sometimes the person you think is betraying you is actually just trying to save themselves. 3 years later, Sarah and Chris are talking about moving in together. When that happens, we'll probably get officially divorced so Sarah can marry the woman she actually wants to build a life with. But we'll still be family. We'll still co-parent our kids and spend holidays together and probably drive Chris a little crazy with how close we are for ex-spouses. Because that's the thing about real love, it doesn't end just because it changes. I still catch myself sometimes, looking at Sarah and Chris together, and feeling a pang of something I can't quite name. Not jealousy exactly, more like wistfulness, for the simplicity of what I thought I had, for the certainty of believing I knew my wife completely. But then I remember that night in the kitchen when she finally told me the truth, and how it felt like we were really seeing each other for the first time in years. That was worth losing everything for. So yeah, my wife had an affair. My wife came out as gay. My wife asked me to completely reimagine our marriage. And I said yes to all of it. Because sometimes, the only way to save your family is to let it fall apart and rebuild it into something completely different. Call me crazy, but I think we're going to be okay. Ever had someone you love ask you to redefine everything you thought you knew about your relationship? Share your story below, and hit subscribe for more tales of families that don't fit the mold.